Hi guys, thank you guys so much again for joining us in the second installment of our newly minted Wednesday webinar series. We get a ton of questions from our CSM and CSPO alums. So each month we're going to chew through a set of those focusing on a theme and open up to you guys to dig in further. So I'm Reese. I've been in the software industry for the better part of the last 15 years. Most of that has been in some form of Agile, Scrum or Fall. We do Sprint, so we're Agile. We use Jira, so we're Agile. Inside that 15 years, I've worn many, many hats, everything from UX to QA, product owner to project manager. Finally landed on Scrum Master about 6-7 years ago, and from there I've grown that craft, and here I am, an Agile coach now. Braz?
Thanks, Reese. I'm Braz. I've been in the software industry for the majority of my career, but recently moved into the nonprofit sector, to marketing organizations, to the federal government. The last decade plus doing Agile, the last 5 years as a full-time Agile coach. I would talk about all the hats I wore, but Reese told me I couldn't wear my hat today.
No hats.
Calling to me from the edge here, and I want to pick it up and put it on, but for Reese's sake, I won't. And when I'm not doing this Agile stuff, I'm a dad to 6 kids and 3 dogs, and this is what I love to do. So thank you all for coming. Reese, I was wondering, just to make sure we're all on the same footing, if you could real quickly go over, exactly what retrospectives are, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so we're not going to go super in-depth. We assume that you guys have run a retro or two. So this is just going to be kind of a quick and dirty 101. But, the 12th principle behind the Agile Manifesto says that at regular intervals, the team reflects on how to become more effective, then tunes and adjusts its behavior accordingly. Scrum says, let's make that biz mandatory. It's pretty awesome. Retrospectives are one of my, if not my favorite ceremony. This is time dedicated each sprint for the team to figure out what would make them better or faster or have better quality or just make their lives easier, and then figure out how to execute on that. So we're popping up a poll right now to see how much time your team actually dedicates to retrospectives. So if you guys could click on that.
People are already starting to fill it out. We'll let this run for a few seconds to see what we get here. And got about 2/3 of everybody in. So give about another 5 or so seconds.
Awesome.
This is a pretty good sample. I'm going to go ahead and stop it here, Reese, and share it.
All right, perfect. So yeah, this is not surprising. That is, so what we're looking at is more than, looking around 70% either don't do retros or do under an hour or under. That's pretty aligned to what we've seen over the years. So you really have to give yourselves time to dig into what's not working and figure out how to fix it. If things kind of do seem to be working, coming together as a team to figure out what that next level up is. We'll talk about this more as we dig into some of the other patterns we've seen and why retros are just not as effective as they could be and how to kind of get out of that rut. So some of the places that we've really seen that we're going to kind of focus in on where things go wrong are doing the same old thing over and over and over again for retro, nothing ever getting better, and what I like to call the extrospective. This is the, hey, everything would be awesome if only those guys would do their job. So Braz, will you kick us off on the retrospective by rote?
Absolutely will. And this is where we're going to bring out our second poll real quick. I'm going to go ahead and launch it up here. But the question we want to get to is, how often do you, as a Scrum Master or a different role in your team, how often does your team change up your retrospective formats? And again, if you don't mind just real quickly clicking in to say, this is how often we change our retrospectives. And doing some quick math, we've got probably, again, about 2/3 of people in. I'll give it a few more seconds here and then share this out. And so, again, unsurprisingly here, we've got almost 2/3 of folks who rarely or never actually change up their retrospective formats. That doesn't surprise me, which is why we bring up this first idea of retrospectives by rote. As Scrum Masters, as team members, we get comfortable. There's something that at some point worked. We were able to get people to start talking and start contributing, and we start seeing some real change as a team, as a company. And then we stop changing, and then we start doing the same thing over again. Hey, let's do a retrospective. It's start, stop, continue. Or if we change it up, it may be, hey, we're not going to do start, stop, continue. We're going to do mad, sad, glad, which is still the same 3 types of questions, but with just different names. Or sailboat, which is still positive and negative. One of the things that we have to do as Scrum Masters, one of the things we try to help coach our teams with is the idea that really 2 things need to happen in retrospective. First is we need to have a team that's engaged. And if you have a team that is doing the same thing every single time, the engagement starts to fall off. The engagement starts to wane, and the interest and the ideas that come out of it start to fall off. So we start to say, let's introduce something new just to spark that bit of imagination and creativity in everybody on our team to go, I'm going to look at this from a different perspective and maybe ask myself a different question. The other reason we change it up, because we don't want to change it up every single time. That was the trick question on our poll. We don't want to change it up just for the sake of changing it up, but we do want to change it up when we need to ask a specific question. One of the things that as a Scrum Master, I always felt I was really given a charge to make sure I did was when there was something that came up, dive specifically to that issue and design my retrospective and the activities to actually highlight that issue and highlight that question. And that takes time. And it also takes more formats and more activities in my tool belt. To get those activities, the first thing I'll mention, and there's going to be an appendix slide at the end that talks about a lot of these. There's the great book, Agile Retrospectives by Esther Derby and Diana Larson. There's Karina Balduff's Retromat, plans for retrospectives.com, both print version and electronic version. There's Tasty Cupcakes. But in general, all of those things, they are tools in your toolbox and activities to get to certain types of questions. However, just because we change up our retrospectives doesn't necessarily mean we're actually having effective retrospectives. Reese, would you mind talking a little bit about how we go from just having a place to talk to actually get to some actionable things we can do to get better?
Yeah, absolutely. If we're spending an hour just sitting around talking, that's great. But if we're not solving anything, then again, that we're not being super effective. We want to really make sure that what's coming out of our retrospectives are actionable items, but not just actions on the symptoms that we're getting, but actions on the real true problem. So going back to the whole Esther and Diana book, man, Agile Retrospectives, Making Good Teams Great. We're going to keep referencing it because it really is a great tool. They talk about a 5-part retro. So you've got your first part and your last part are an opening and closing. Opening is really important because you really want to make sure that you're creating a safe space, creating, safety in the room to make sure everybody feels comfortable talking about whatever needs to happen. And you're pulling in any, hey, we're having a bad day or we're in a funk. Like you just want to set the tone and the temperature of the room. And then that closing, you want to make sure everybody got something out of it. If you came up with some fun idea and everybody hated it, you probably don't want to do it again. Like don't try to make it better. But then the 3 pieces in the middle are the real meat and potatoes of really digging in and finding actionable items. So the first one is gathering data. We're really good at this. This is us sitting down, writing on Post-it notes, 1 thought per Post-it note, positives, deltas, stop, start, continues, mad, sad, glads. This is great. We focus a lot of energy on that area. And then we usually jump straight to the last part, which is, the 4th part, which is coming up with action items. But a lot of the times that means that we're solving symptoms. So that part in the middle is generally what we see most often skipped, which is really the generating insights. Taking those action or gathering that data and figuring out what it really means. Maybe that's root cause analysis. We keep talking about that retromat and the book. Both of those have a ton of items or a ton of activities where you can really focus on digging in and gathering or generating that insight. So yeah, jumping in and making sure you're doing all 5 parts is really going to get you a very, very actionable. And also one thing to mention is the number of action items. you don't want to come out with like 12 things, because if everything's important, right? Nothing's important. So make sure you're doing 1, 2, maybe 3 items and get those things out there. So just because we're getting our action items, Braz, doesn't mean we're truly being effective, right?
What?
Something about the dreaded
We can actually
retrospective.
generate things to do and not actually solve our problems. It's something we see all the time. We have teams that go around and they start building up these things to do, and then Reese calls it, and she called it earlier, and I love this turn of phrase. She called them extrospectives. The whole point of retrospective is for us to get together as a team and look inward to us to figure out how we want to improve. And that never happens if our action items are things for other people to do and changes need to happen outside the team. And we raise that impediment, but no one fixed it for us. It goes from being an introspective exercise to an extrospective exercise. And again, I love Diana Larson. I think Reese and I may be both on a bit of a Diana Larson high after Agile 2017. We got to talk to her a bit. She uses this exercise called circles and soup. And I love this because what it defines is your circles of control and circles of influences as a team. What are the things we have direct control over? What are the things that we can change as a team? Conversely, what are the things that we can influence? We can't actually do anything, but boy, we have great relationships with that other team over there that has dependencies on one of the things that we do, and that other team over there that we depend on to get things done. And I've got a great relationship with this manager and this manager and this manager. Boy, I can lean on some of my ability to be persuasive to influence the things that are going on. Those are places where we can actually look at some actionable items and affect real change. But that other stuff, the soup, the things that Diana says stay away from, the reason we put up these circles, and I love Reese's drawing, is as you're coming up with ideas of things to do, figure out if these are actual things that you as a team can do. Because if you pick things that are outside of your sphere of control, or sphere of influence, your retrospective just turn into an extrospective, and you're not going to get anything done. Once you have those things there in the middle, and I draw with my finger on my screen because it's such a great picture. Once I have those things there in the middle, what I want to make sure we do is make sure we understand who's picking those things up from your backlog. Yes, your backlog. That means that the actionable items we want to get fixed are things that show up on our backlog just like anything else. We make them visible. We make them important. We make sure that they are things that we see that they're being worked on. And the thing may be really small. Let's change one of our team norms. My favorite one from one of my teams ever was someone made fish lunch one day, and it really just made the kitchen reek. Hey, our new team norm in our retrospective is no more stinky fish. Great. That's an easy one. But who are we actually following through to make sure we're actually keeping true to our own commitments as a team? Put those things in your backlog and make them visible so that someone has the responsibility on your team to get them done just like anything else. So those are the big ones that we've seen. Those are the things that we really feel passionate about. But we want to go to a few of your questions too. And Reese, I want to go ahead and ask the first question that we've seen coming from our alums and our CSM and CSPOs is, when should you hold your retrospectives? Should I hold it before sprint planning?
Definitely. There's a reason why most of the books say do this as your last activity. You know, this is the opportunity for you to look back at the sprint and see what held you back, what kept you guys from being awesome. So if you do that after sprint planning, you don't have, like Brad said, the opportunity to put those in your backlog. So you might not actually create actionable items or follow through with them. So the other thing is, what if your action, or what if the problem in the sprint or the focus was predictability? So your sprint planning is your biggest area of focus, that anchor of predictability. And this, if you do your retrospective after sprint planning, you've got to wait 2-3 weeks to actually solve anything and go dig in and work on those things in sprint planning. So yeah, you really want that to be your cap on the sprint. You don't want that to be in the next sprint. Braz, what's the next question? As a product owner, should I come to retrospectives? I want the team to be able to speak freely about what they need from me. I think they could do better if I'm not there.
Oh yeah, if they can do better if you're not there, you definitely shouldn't come. This question, and I say that flippantly, this question has a couple of layers to it. Now, as a Scrum Master, it brings up my spidey sense. It makes me start to wonder, first of all, who comes to a retrospective? And this is, again, Scrum Training 101. Hopefully we all remember this from our CSM or CSPOs. Our Scrum team has 3 roles in the team: a Scrum Master, a team member, and a product owner. Product owner is part of the team, and the whole team is at the retrospective. If we are going to get better as a team, if there are issues going on with how available my product owner is or his lack of authority, I'd like to be able to talk to him about it to figure out how we can solve that issue as a team. And if my product owner is not there, we just went from an introspective retrospective to an retrospective retrospective. I'm expecting someone else, not in the room, to solve my problems. But then there's another layer to this, which is, boy, as a product owner, I need to have this feeling that my team can speak freely without me there. I think they could do that better if I'm not there. And as a Scrum Master, that's where I pull out my flag hat. And hey, it's football season, by the way. Flag hat. This is an issue. This is an immediate point for me to pivot into, well, why don't we feel comfortable with our product owners here? And my retrospective just went from whatever I'd planned, whatever activities I'd put off a retro mat, however I laid it out to say, hey, what's going on? We need to solve this. And we need to solve it now so we can be an effective team and get back to the place where we can have great retrospectives and get better. Because without our product owner there, that's not going to happen. That's a good one. I'm so passionate about that one. Reese, let's talk about the next question. It seems like my retrospectives become less effective over time. How do I keep them more effective?
Do everything that we just said. Okay, that's totally probably a cop-out.
It's totally a cop-out. So, and again, this is one that I think you and I struggled about as we were sitting through going some of these questions. The fact that my retrospective is less and less effective is, in fact, itself a retrospective topic. Hey, team, you guys look checked out. Why is that? Part of the role of that Scrum Master is to be that light and that mirror to the team to go, team, here's what's going on. Here's what I'm seeing. Why is this happening? And the retrospective ought to be that safe place that we've built as a team so we can have those hard conversations about, wow, you know what? I don't feel like I'm going to participate because this isn't useful because nothing ever comes of it. Ah, great. Hey, you know what? I feel like we're not taking enough time. We're not actually getting to the root causes of our problems. Ah, great. That's our opportunity to just be able to say, let's now pivot to make our retrospectives itself more effective by retrospecting on our retrospectives. Very meta.
So meta.
I totally stole your question. I'm sorry.
Oh, well, so tee up the next one for me. I'll take it.
Go for it. So are outside stakeholders or managers involved or invited to our retrospectives? And if not, who provides the download?
Whew, this one's a loaded one.
You guys have juicy questions.
Yeah, you guys ask great questions. And also remember, keep them coming over in the Q&A. We've got a few in there right now, and we'd love to have answer a bunch of you guys' questions. So outside stakeholders, that we're going to take this one in 2 parts. First, we'll talk about the download. So who's a retrospective for? The team. It's for no one else but the team. There is no download. If the team wants to have notes taken or capture everything, pictures of their boards or whatever, that's for them. That's for them to look back and to hold themselves accountable for figuring out those action items or see what they talked about and go, I feel like we're having the same conversation over and over again. But this is not a download for your managers. If your managers want to know what's going on, that's a conversation. But so stakeholders and managers being invited and or involved, this is a very slippery slope. I mean, I have a really cool boss, and so I'm really comfortable saying things to him, but not everyone is. You remember we talked about you want to create this like safety net and this safe environment for everybody to speak freely. And if we're, jamming out like weird ideas on how we're going to improve, people maybe feel stupid talking, throwing out something that could just be what they consider a dumb idea in front of their manager, or admitting that we're doing wrong. We might skirt around the hard topics if our manager's in the room because we don't really want to tell them that we grew up production like 6 times, so you want to make sure that only the team and the whole team, like whole Scrum team, developers, Scrum Master, and product owner are in the room. All right, next question. I'm on a big team. 90 minutes tends to not be enough time for a retro. What should I do as a Scrum Master? The team is 12 people.
So I thank you, Reese, for these lovely, meaty questions. This one's a fun one. So again, this one's one with multiple layers. And as a coach, I put on my hat. Oh, it's right there. I want to put my hat on, guys. And I start thinking, okay, what's going on here? First one, I'm on a big team. There's my first red flag right there. 12 people's big, and we all understand. I'm sure, but let me remind you that what's the size of a team? It's 7 plus or minus 2. 12 people starts to be a bigger team. Yep. If you're looking to have everyone be involved and everyone contribute and start having a really vibrant, inclusive discussion about what's going on with our team, 12 people, 90 minutes, yeah, that could be a challenge. My first question would be is your team really 12 people? Is everybody on the team on the team? Is everybody invested, not just interested, right? Are we team members, or are we stakeholders, or are we managers, or are we folks outside the team that would love to be a part of it, but maybe shouldn't be part of the retrospective? And if we are all on the team, well, are we really one team? Maybe we're 2 teams. Maybe there's some opportunity for us to split into 2 teams and start doing some T-shaped people, start doing some people who have broader skills and can actually create greater organizational velocity by having more than one team. But then the third thing becomes is, okay, well, 90 minutes isn't enough time for a retro. Okay. My first question is, are you following our 5-part format? Are we actually getting through all 3 pieces? Are we actually flexing our facilitation muscles and setting good time boxes and driving those parts of the retrospective to conclusion? If we're not, then maybe the question is, how do I make sure I'm doing that? How do I grow my facilitation chops? And if I am, great. Hey, team, 90 minutes isn't enough. Do we want to take more time? As a Scrum Master, we don't have to have all the answers. We have to be comfortable enough and have a great amount of trust with our team to say, hey, team, I'm noticing this problem. What do we want to do about it? It's not on the Scrum Master to fix everything, but it's definitely on the Scrum Master to highlight these issues and bring them up.
I know, that was a meaty one. All right, so we're going to jump over to everyone else's questions.
Yeah.
So remember, if you haven't gotten those in, start getting those questions in, and we're not going to put a time limit on it, so you can keep throwing them in as you think of them. So do we want to start with the top, or do you need a minute to drink some water?
I'll take a sip, so I will part this one to you.
All right, so I'm going to kind of combine 2 questions because they feel pretty similar and kind of from the same vein. So Sunda asked, what strategies to take if a team is not worried about getting their action items to completion or working on them? And then Julian also asked, what do you do if the same issues keep coming back for discussion retro after retro? And yeah, so following back up is really important. There's this one retro called the Rocket Ship Retro. Just look it up. We can include it in the thing, but it makes sure that each time you come back and you look at the action items from the last time, but really checking in at the beginning of your retro and saying, hey, here are the 2 action items we said we were going to, work on. Where are we at? Again, putting those in the backlog, like Brad said, like getting those in there so you have eyes on the prize. If you're not following up on them, then come up as a team. Hey, team, why aren't we completing our action items? We spent 90 minutes last week talking about this stuff, and we don't seem to, all we want to do is talk about it. We don't seem to want to do anything about it. How do we fix that? So yeah, hopefully that answered you guys' questions.
Yeah, Reese, I think that's a great answer for it. And making sure we actually have that visibility into things and have somebody watching these things to say, guys, we are doing it. This is such a key part of it. Sunda also asked, what do you do if the team doesn't participate or has very minimum participation? Whew. Again, this is let's put on my Scrum Master cape for a moment. I don't have to solve this problem, right? But I do have to ask the question, team, you guys, what's going on? You guys aren't participating. You guys aren't asking questions. You guys aren't generating things to do. Or possibly, hey, guess what? You guys are saying everything's fine. Is it? What's really going on? Ask those hard questions. And there are great retrospective tools and activities, great facilitation things you can do to make sure you ask people one-to-one. Hey, Reese, I'm noticing you're being quiet and everybody else is talking. I'd love to be able to hear from you. Do you have any thoughts at all?
But make sure that you're not alienating folks that maybe are quiet or introverts. It's hard to sometimes for introverts to speak in rooms that are big, or they're not feeling super comfortable in. So don't make sure you're also not creating safety violations.
Absolutely. Safety, the retrospective is the one place as a team we ought to feel safe. And if there are things that make it so that we're not feeling safe, hey team, we're not talking. Do you guys feel that you have a safe place you can talk? Ask those questions and make sure you have that. And if not, I hear you guys. What could I do to help? What can we do to create? What's going on? And if you see a really egregious moment, Reese is just, nope, not going to talk. And try to find some time to take her aside outside of the retrospective, where it's not the performance anxiety, where there may not be a person-to-person issue on the team, and say, hey, Reese, what's going on? I would love to be able to help. Do you feel comfortable talking to me? So
yeah, Scrum Masters, this is your opportunity to be really, a lot of times we see Scrum Masters solely just running the board and facilitating and everything else. This is your opportunity to really see what's going on and watch everybody's actions and make sure that, you're creating space for everyone to have a voice, and you're seeing where there's that, body. We always say that the words coming out of our mouth is only 50% of the conversation. Watch people's reactions to certain things. Make sure that you're taking the opportunity to really dig in and help the team. All right, so I'm going to jump ahead a little bit.
Go for it.
This one's going to be a quick one. So should the actions coming from the retro become part of the sprint backlog for the next sprint? Yes, absolutely. Again, make sure you're limiting yourself to a couple. Now there's some things that aren't going to fall in there. If something like, hey, we need to revisit our team agreements. Yes, create a ticket in your backlog. Make sure you've got eyes on the prize on that, and that it's something that you guys are creating space for in your sprint. There are other items, it's, maybe they don't fit in there, but as much as possible, try to get those in your backlog so that you have visibility. Remember, your sprint backlog is a place to show and create visibility into everything that you need to do in the sprint, and then you're checking in on it daily. How are we doing? Keep, checking in and seeing how we're going on that. All right, Braz, what do you got next?
So, an anonymous attendee asked the question, what tools would you recommend for remote team members during retros to be more effective and collaborative? This is one of my favorites. This hits a hot button issue to me that I feel pretty passionate about. So I will do my best to contain my passion for the sake of we only have 31 minutes and change. I could fill this all up. So here's my first tool, and it's not a tool. It's a mindset. How many retrospectives have we been in as team members and as Scrum Masters where we all get together in the room and everybody flips up their laptop and the entire retrospective is set like this, right? It doesn't matter if I'm remote or if I'm co-located. If I'm not mentally co-located, physically co-located, it doesn't matter. Mentally co-located, nothing is going to be effective. So the first thing I ask is, how do you actually communicate with your team to ask them, hey guys, are we actually here? Are you actually participating? Have you shut down Twitter on your laptop? Have you shut down whatever video you have going on in your Facebook feed and everything else is going on? Are you here? I would direct everyone, if they want to go to some really advanced team member activities, to look at the core protocols by Jim and Melissa McCarthy. Super advanced, really sometimes difficult, but incredibly effective ways to work as teams, especially teams that are remote, to highlight some of those team issues. So first, mentally make sure you're checked in. Once you're mentally checked in, the rest of the stuff gets easy. So what other tools would I use or have I used? I've used everything from, hey, everybody, let's pull up whatever the internal IM client is, and we'll type. And everybody type their things to me as a Scrum Master, and we'll talk about them there. Hey, let's use, and it's whatever Microsoft is calling it now, Link, it's Communicator. We'll use the whiteboard built into that, and I can draw on the whiteboard and write on this virtual whiteboard. Things that you're probably already installed in your corporate environment that you can just go ahead and start using. If those start to feel a little like they're a handcuff, there are other tools out there. Retrium's a company that has some fantastic retrospective tools. They're fairly recent. They had a great booth and some folks talking at Agile 2017. I've used them in the past, and their stuff's only getting better. Luke Holman, who is the guy who did Innovation Games, both the book and the website, has on his innovationgames.com website some great ways for you to use some existing retrospective and idea generation templates, plus create your own. They'll let you do that all virtually. But really what it comes down to, and there are others, there are lean coffee table if you want to do a lean coffee retrospective. There are a ton of them, and we'll put some in our appendix at the end. The end of the day, though, is if you have people who are mentally co-located, the tools get to be less and less of an issue. They become a way to amplify your abilities to work together and less of a crutch about how do things get done. So hopefully, Mr. Anonymous Attendee, I answered your question. Reese, do you have one you want to jump on?
Yeah, so I will jump. Oh, they move when you do that. I was just about to read it.
Oh.
Here's one of my favorite. How do you handle a team that believes they're a high-performing team and that there is nothing to improve? So this one's hard. This is sometimes a challenge, and sometimes as a Scrum Master, and I've had to do this, I've had to pull them away and kind of go like, for a second, let's pretend we're not the best team in the room or the best team in the company. What are cool things? How can we get better? What can we do? What magic silver bullet could we do to dig in and get even more and more, next level up? We could also do something like I've done with teams, a team health check. Atlassian has some tools out there. You look up Spotify, the Agile coach at Spotify, Heinrich Niebuhr, amazing, and tons of tools online. But he put out a team health check that works really well, and it's basically cards on certain topics like our deployment, and it's got a positive and a negative. So it's like our deployments are super easy, it's push of a button, we can do it anytime we want, versus our deployments are super risky and very hard, and we have to schedule them and be up at midnight. So, and it just allows the team to just kind of look, here's a either thumbs up or thumbs down, or how we're doing in the middle. And so it gives teams kind of a board or some more tangible items to work on if they kind of feel like they've run out of ideas. But yeah, there are tons of tools to get out there, but really it's figuring out ways to be honest with each other. Like, why do we think that we don't have anywhere else to go? Why do we think that we don't have any improvement? And sometimes, that it's a challenge to get there. I'll be honest.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can't.
One of the things that I've used, and again, I'm thinking back to Agile 2017 last week and Wednesday morning's keynote. For those of you who weren't there, I'll give you a little bit, but I think back to my times working with some really high performing, I would say at the time, technical teams. They're doing the whole full DevOps stack. They're doing CI/CD. They're delivering close to on demand. And boy, they really do feel like everything's firing on all cylinders. And a retrospective where, hey guys, I'm hard pressed as a Scrum Master to start challenging you. Then I sat in Jez Humble's keynote, started talking about some of the really big organizations out there, and he mentioned Amazon and the fact that they do something in the range of 17,000 deployments a week. And my brain all of a sudden went, holy cow. And so a tool I can use to those teams are, could we do 17,000 deployments a week? And if no, why not? Ooh, there's your immediate opportunity to say, there's some things that are going on. A lot of those will start to be retrospectives. Yeah. Systems aren't right. Customers aren't ready. Marketing, great. What could we do to prepare it so that when those parts of the organization are finally ready, we can go ahead and have all of our decks cleared? Yep. Start with some of those really big, hairy, audacious BHAGs, right? Big, hairy, audacious goals, and say, what could we do that would be 15 times better than what we're doing today? You may not think it's possible, but if we plan for it, it will be possible. And that's a place to start generating some engines of improvement.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to pick another one here because safety became a real touch point for us over the last couple of weeks. Another anonymous attendee asked, do you think it's a safety violation if the Scrum Master makes it mandatory for each team member to answer each question on status updates? Ooh, that's a good one. So here's my thought on that. Safety is something that is so easy to break. And the best way right off the bat to start having better safety is to ask. Hey guys, I'm noticing that not everybody's answering everything and everything's going on. Would you guys mind if I reminded you if you forget to answer one of the questions during our stand-up, would that be okay? Asking that permission, asking that moment of engagement and enlisting them into the solution is huge. If you don't have that enlistment, if you don't have that engagement, absolutely, there's an opportunity, even if you were the nicest Scrum Master in the world, to make someone feel unsafe, to make it feel like the things that they are thinking and the things that they are doing aren't okay. And it loses that opportunity to start diving into those root cause issues, to be able to say, what's going on? What can I help you do to feel more comfortable so that we can feel more comfortable, so that we can now improve as a team together and not leave you behind and not leave you in a place where you can't be involved because you're self-selecting out of that improvement opportunity and out of that team.
Yeah, Brad's helped me to understand a little bit that I sometimes tend to remove safety from the room when I feel uncomfortable. I tend to go to humor or like, hey, you're looking at me like I'm crazy. What's that about?
Right,
I tend to remove safety in those situations. So it's hard. It's something you just always have to keep in mind and always check back with the team and make sure that you're allowing them to hold their boundaries and hold where they feel not safe.
Right. Hold is such a great word. And there's this responsibility we have as Scrum Masters to create a container, create the space for the team to start being introspective and the team to start being honest and hold that space. And we pay a lot of lip service to that idea, but the actual work of doing it, both of managing the team, and I don't mean managing in the manager-employee relationship, but managing from an emotions and feelings standpoint, but also managing the space and managing myself, which is the hardest part, I think, of all of them, to be able to say, I'm managing my feelings and my reactions so that when I'm put in a place where I'm uncomfortable, I don't drag everybody else along with me by cracking that joke that, hey, Reese, you look at me like I'm crazy. Okay, well, now Reese thinks I'm crazy. Ooh, yeah. What am I doing wrong?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Thank
you, Anonymous Attendee. I really appreciate that.
All right.
Want to jump into one?
Yeah. So do you recommend using retro time to reevaluate working agreements and establishing/building team charters? Done both. It's mostly ask the team. Do you feel strongly enough about us reevaluating our working agreements right now? Is that the hottest topic? Is that what you want to spend your retro time doing? Or do we want to schedule that? Is something an action item coming out of retro that we need to work on our working agreements, and we want to make sure that we leave space in the sprint for that? Usually when kicking off a team, we're going to spend a lot of time in that kind of first sprint or throughout that first chunk of time building, doing team chartering, building our definition of done, ready, working agreements, talking about collaboration, figuring out where we are in that whole T-shape. We keep mentioning it. It might be an allusion to next month. But yeah. Take it to the team. We're going to keep saying this, like ask the team how they feel about it. If they want to spend retro doing that because they think that's the highest priority thing for them to do, then do it. If not, make sure that you're setting aside that time. And that's, again, why we do sprint retrospective before sprint planning, so that we can hold time and create space in that sprint to fix things, right? All right.
So, Reese, I noticed I accidentally clicked the wrong one that I answered. So I want to go back to say one that I clicked by accident. That's the question.
No, I was like, where'd that go?
No, it's okay. And I feel like you answered it, but I want to touch on it a little bit too.
Before you jump in there, can I do one thing? So we're running low on questions, and we want to make sure that we're not just pigeonholing you guys to retro. You're here, we're here. So if you have other questions that have nothing to do with retrospectives or are even loosely related, bring them on. We're here, you're here. Let's take this time to answer your questions. We want to make sure that we're here for you. So
thank you, Reese. Good call. Thank you.
So jump into that next question.
Yeah. So Jenna asked, what do you do when the team assures you that there's nothing in the mad, sad, stop, negative categories, right? So that's my first question to say, what other type of retrospectives are there? What other formats can I have to start getting to gathering data and especially generating insights? Great. We have nothing we could do better. Well, let's even 5 whys that statement. Why do we think there's nothing we could do better? Because we're awesome. Why do we think we're awesome? Because we deliver on time every time. Okay. Why? How could we do that better? Oh, I know, I broke the 5 whys there. Whoops. But we start uncovering some of those assumptions behind, we think we're awesome. We think we're great. And some of these things that we are assuming as the status quo can't get any better, there's an opportunity for me as a Scrum Master and for me as a coach to start leaning in to go, let me challenge some of those assertions. Let me investigate some of those assumptions and see if they really are as good as they could be, or if we start to plateau and said, yep, this new status quo is fine. And that's going to be okay. And no one set a vision for what the next status quo could be. So when there's nothing there that's negative, we'll start asking some real hard questions about, okay, well, why do we think that? Why do we think we're the best team in the world? Are we really? Why do we think there's new opportunity for us to get better? Don't we want to get better? Aren't there things we could do? What would you really love to be able to do that you can't do now as a team member, as a team, as an organization, that we have an opportunity to start unlocking by thinking differently about how we do our work? So.
Awesome. So we got a question actually in the chat. So I'm going to jump over there really quick before we move on to other ones, because this one's been in there for a minute. I just didn't see it.
Yeah.
Do you recommend Sprint Retro before Sprint Review or after Sprint Review? I'm absolutely in the camp, and I'll tell you that there are 2 camps in this. It's not one my way or the highway, but I am definitely in the camp of retro is the last thing. Mostly because things could come out of Sprint Review that, there could be, oh man, we did not see that happening. What can we do? And if we had just had a retrospective, again, now we have to wait 2 weeks. So you really want that retrospective to be that cap on there. But if you've read the Scrum Guide, you know that there is a portion of Sprint Review that talks about, kind of informing stakeholders kind of what happened in the last sprint. And that kind of feels a little like retro, but it's not. It's, hey, maybe we didn't get some stuff done, or we got, this thing went crazy, or here's why our numbers are doing this, or blah, 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 like kind of giving them a status almost, but not like, or something went wrong and here's what we're going to be talking about that in retrospect, and we're going to be figuring out how to fix that. But yeah, you really want to make that kind of the anchor to your sprint, the last thing that you do before you go into sprint planning, so that you're really tying the whole sprint off. Good question.
Yeah. So I want to go ahead and jump on here from Julian. Reese, you mentioned a book, and I want to make sure we've answered that. I'm pretty sure that book was Agile Retrospectives by Esther and Diana, and there wasn't another one that I missed.
Yeah. I was trying to think if I missed it. Another book.
So Julian, if that's not it, please jump back into a Q&A. I'm going to say that we answered that one, but if we missed it, please let us know.
And we'll send a transcript as well of the whole thing. So if we can't remember what I said, then the transcript will tell you. Exactly. But we'll dig that one out and make sure that we get that for you.
And so this is where I'm going to not cede my time to the senator from Texas. And Sarah asked, is there a format or agenda for a targeted retrospective? For example, when there's a problem that needs to be addressed that may not come up in the start, stop, continue format. There are lots, Sarah. Part of what I've been doing over the years with retrospectives is, and this is kind of a guideline for how to build effective retrospectives. If we're saying that you're going to spend an hour and a half, maybe even 2 hours doing a retrospective, how much time do you spend preparing? How much time do you spend thinking through activities and working through the amount of transitions between one section of the retrospective to the other? How am I going to flip from gathering data to generating insight? And how do I make sure that those activities are matching? So one of the first things I say is, yes, there are tons of targeted retrospective formats. More importantly, are you taking the time to do that investigation and start looking for them, start running through resources like the book, Agile Retrospectives, like Retromat, like Tasty Cupcakes, to say, you know what, this one doesn't feel like it's going to get to the problem I'm trying to uncover. Let me make sure I can find activities that could get me a little more focused around this type of issue or getting these types of people involved. That's one thing you can do. If you have a high degree of trust with your team, boy, ask them. And that's a hard one. That's a scary one sometimes. There's a lot of personal fear that I've had even. Be able to say, hey, team, you know what? I'm noticing that when Reese starts talking, I'm going to pick on you again, Reese. when Reese starts talking, everybody else shuts down. What's going
Because I
on?
have awesome things.
What's going on? And Reese, I really need you to just be in a place where you can listen for a few minutes and hear what your team's saying, because there's something that's going on and we need to be able to do that. And hold a strong facilitator's hand to help that team get past some of these things that they won't talk about. Sarah, I'd love to sit down at some point to talk to you, and feel free to reach out to us to be able to say, let's talk through some specific things that go through some of those situations. But outside of finding specific activities or calling the elephant in the room and saying, guys, let's talk about this, you have to make sure the safety's there. You have to make sure that you are going out of your way to reinforce the fact that this is a safe place for us to talk. I hope that helps, Sarah.
Do you want to follow that up a little bit with Valerie's question? Because it kind of falls in the same vein. That's right before we switch gears.
Yeah. And this is one, when I saw Valerie's question, I thought of one specifically that I ran with one of my teams here in the Richmond area. And it's hey, here's a project retrospective. And, this is similar to the anonymous question around postmortems. I'm even combining both of those together. What are some of the things that we can do for these longer running products? And a retrospective that I love was the Amazon product review, right? Here's this thing that we just released that it's gone through a bunch of small little iterations, and now it's done and the big release is out there. Hey, team, let's go ahead and talk about what's our Amazon review. What's it going to look like? What are the things customers are going to love? What was awesome about this? Hey, what are the things that stink? What are the things that we really didn't like? And that's different than, here are the things that happened and here's how I felt. Here's what it has from an outward-facing standpoint. Here's what it is from a customer standpoint. Here's what it is. Boy, it's awesome and it's great, but it's a little clunky and runs slow. What's going on there, and where can we learn from that? The timeline is a great way to start highlighting points in time and potentially looking for those connections between here's what's going on outside the team in our real world, in our real life, versus inside the team and how those things manifested. The other thing I've seen timelines do is, I get that, above and below the timeline. Here are the things internal to the team. Here are the things that happened in our life. Hey, guess what? Steve got married and Susan had a baby. Wow, how did that affect our ability as a team? Wow, our productivity really dropped when Steve got married because Steve had some really specialized skills, but we learned from that. So that when Susan had her baby, boy, we were able to keep going because we were actually able to anticipate that and learn from our mistakes. So there's lots of variations of the timeline. There's lots of activities. I love the Amazon product review that starts giving you that customer-facing perspective on what's gone with that product. The one thing I want to touch on with the postmortem is, and I hate the word postmortem, the idea that we're going to go through and consider this thing dead. I mean, post-mortem, this thing's dead. And now we're just going to look at the corpse of this thing that's behind us to figure out what happened. Let me turn into a mortician, and let me turn into a forensic mortician to start looking at the things that I could learn from this thing that we're not a part of. And it separates us from the fact that we're still a vibrant team. We are still invested in getting this thing done. And this is one of those tipping points from I'm a project manager to I'm a team member. And what we start to recognize is, if we're doing Scrum well and if we're doing Agile well, we're no longer building projects. We're building long-running, vibrant teams that can solve any problem and deliver any value by building this lively retrospective versus looking at this, we're now done with this project. We can look over the history of it to see how we reacted as a team. We can look over it from a customer's perspective to see what we learned. But our team is still moving forward and we're still invested. So this is if we're going to safety, this is a trigger word for me. Don't call it a postmortem. Make sure you recognize that the team is still there and they're still invested. And that it's really important for them to feel like they have a huge amount of value and a huge voice in things moving forward. Thanks. Reese, awesome. I'm going to get off my soapbox for a second.
No worries. I love your soapbox. All right. So Anne asked, so Julian, don't worry, we're getting to it, I promise, but that's a huge meaty one. So if we don't get other ones, I want to end on that note. But Anne asked, would love to hear ideas and possibilities and pitfalls around scaling Agile. Likely would fill another webinar. That is a great idea.
That is a great idea.
I know. We should totally have a scaling Agile webinar.
That's going to make people angry. I love it.
So
No, it will. That's okay.
we are scaling up. Our companies are getting bigger. We can't be
Absolutely.
startup forever. And there are tons of different frameworks that very, very smart people have come up with to help you scale. If you're doing Scrum, you could just start doing Scrum of Scrums, and then Scrum, like the fractalization, if you will, of Scrum teams, and just make sure you're starting small and continuing to grow out and checking in at next levels and next levels and next levels. SAFe is very scaled agile framework, very prescriptive, has everything figured out for you. You just kind of plug and play. You can start really big, or you can start with one team and start fitting all the pieces together. Less large scale Scrum is around, and it really truly is it calls itself actually descaling. Mm-hmm. So getting rid of a lot of the levels of hierarchy and just really making sure that you're digging in. One product owner. If there's one product, there's one product owner. Maybe there's 5 teams, but there's one person who's in charge of those things. So truly, it depends on your team, depends on what you guys need as an organization, what the right scaling framework is. But yeah, companies are getting bigger. There are tons of pitfalls, tons of possibilities. So yeah, I think that's probably a great idea for another webinar.
Reese, I don't want to get on my soapbox, but this is the one thing I will say, and this is my first thing that comes up when people ask about scaling agility. Mm-hmm. Start with your team. Yeah. Get a high-performing team. Get a team that's working well before you start worrying about how to scale it. And if you're scaling, if you have a team that isn't working well, if you have a team that is not producing, the team that's not high-performing, you're going to scale all of those bad habits. You're going to scale all of those dysfunctions. If you have a team that is, pardon me, if you have a team that's doing crap, you're going to scale crap. Don't scale crap. Scale good. Start with good. And if you aren't good,
that's the title of the webinar. Don't scale crap.
That's going to be the title of the webinar. Get ready.
Don't scale crap.
Don't scale crap.
Yeah.
October Wednesday webinar. Don't scale crap.
Well, I told you I'd make people mad. That's me being calm, Reese.
No, maybe we'll get a couple more of us in here, and we'll all duke it out. We all have our favorite, but you know. Yeah. All right. So Julian asks, what are your biggest takeaways from Agile 2017? Oh man, I don't think I've had enough time to decompress yet from Agile 2017. I think some of the biggest takeaways are that all those people who write all those books, those are real people, and they'll sit down and have a conversation and a beer with you and eat dinner, and they're coming up with new ideas. Like Jürgen Apollo sat and had dinner with us and was pitching his kind of newest idea and really looking for feedback, like human beings. And that, like, my little Agile nerd Twitter patient abated, and finally I was like, man, these people are just real people like me, except for they've been doing it either longer or in some cases better or worse. They've had a lot more opportunities to do it wrong than I have so far, and they're getting their ideas out there. And so that was a really cool thing. There was a lot of focus on safety. There was on building high performing teams and really truly digging in and making sure that everyone has a voice. I personally focused a lot on sketchnoting and on visual meetings and making sure, I think it's something like 10% of words are retained if a slide is all words, or if whatever you're talking about is just words, but it's like 60-something% retained if there are pictures involved. So is it higher than that?
Higher than that.
Wow, man. So I've been really working on that, because as a coach and sometimes Scrum Master, I'm facilitating a lot of meetings, and words just don't get through. What else, Braz? What were some of your biggest takeaways?
It's interesting to me. The big Agile conferences for me are there's such a broad spectrum of people around the idea of what the audience we're trying to hit, what the intended spot in your journey you are, and the fact that there's still so much going on around people who are just dipping their toes into agility still surprises me. This is Agile 2017 was the first time I've been to one of these Agile conferences in almost a decade. One of the big ones. I've been going to so many little conferences. It's amazing to see how many people are there. And it's amazing to see, as much as we talked about safety, as much as we talked about these being real people, it's such an incredibly inclusive community.
So
you can walk up to any of us at any point and say, hey, do you have 5 minutes? And unless my hair is literally on fire or I'm 10 minutes late to something, you can stop and have a great conversation with some of the biggest thought leaders in our sector. And connect to you on a human-to-human basis. And it's just so empowering and so comforting that it makes me just happy to be part of this community. So thank you all who are here joining into this community. Still sometimes may feel like I used to feel, 10 years ago, that who the heck are these people? How could anybody listen to my question? Because we love this stuff and we love you guys and we would love to be able to help. So you were going to say something, Reese. I'm sorry.
No, that was like the perfect end. I don't want to ruin that. So we are going to be back here next month. It will be on a Wednesday, hopefully. And we will see you guys then to talk about roles. Thank you so much.
Yes.